The story of the Niterói-Class frigates is not one of decline, but of transition. In an era when naval power is often measured by the newest hulls, the most advanced sensors, or the longest missile ranges, Brazil offers a different lesson. For more than 4 decades, the Niteroi-class has formed a quiet but persistent backbone of the Brazilian surface fleet. Today, as these ships approach the final chapters of their service lives, they continue to shape Brazil's naval presence in ways that go far beyond raw combat capability. For the Brazilian Navy, the Niteroi-class represents a generation of ships born in a different strategic environment. Designed during the Cold War and commissioned from the early 1970s onward, these frigates were once at the center of Brazil's ambitions to operate as a credible blue water navy in the South Atlantic. They provided anti-submarine warfare capacity, surface combat capability, and a platform for fleet coordination at a time when Brazil sought to professionalize and modernize its maritime forces. Over time, modernization programs extended their relevance. Upgrades to sensors, combat management systems, and onboard electronics allowed the Niteroi-class to remain operational well into the 21st century. Yet modernization can only go so far. Hull age, propulsion limitations, and the structural constraints of older designs inevitably impose ceilings that even the most carefully managed refits cannot break. The Brazilian Navy has long understood this reality, and its current approach reflects strategic realism rather than nostalgia. What makes the Niteroi-class particularly relevant today is not what these ships can no longer do, but what they still do effectively. In recent years, Niteroi-class frigates have remained active participants in multinational exercises, maritime security operations, and naval diplomacy missions. Their presence in joint drills with partners from Africa, Europe, and Asia underscores Brazil's commitment to cooperative security in the South Atlantic and beyond. These deployments are not symbolic. They train crews, sustain operational routines, and reinforce Brazil's image as a responsible maritime actor. At sea, the current operational reality of the Niteroi-class is defined by flexibility. These ships conduct patrols, support maritime law enforcement, and participate in exercises focused on boarding operations, search and rescue, and coordinated surface maneuvering. In regions such as the Gulf of Guinea, where maritime crime, illegal trafficking, and weak governance intersect, the steady presence of a Brazilian frigate carries both practical and political weight. It signals engagement, stability, and a willingness to shoulder regional responsibilities. Naval diplomacy has become one of the most important roles of the Niteroi-class in this late stage of service. Port visits, combined exercises, and officer exchanges carried out aboard these ships help maintain Brazil's international defense relationships. For many partner navies, especially those operating similar legacy platforms, the Niteroi-class remains a familiar and credible counterpart. In this sense, these frigates serve as ambassadors of Brazilian naval culture and professionalism, reinforcing ties that no single procurement contract can replace. However, it would be misleading to ignore the limitations that now define the class. Against modern threats, particularly advanced air and missile systems, the Niteroi-class lacks the layered defenses expected of contemporary frontline combatants. Sensor integration, network-centric warfare capabilities, and electronic warfare resilience are areas where newer designs offer decisive advantages. Maintenance demands also rise as ships age, placing increasing pressure on budgets and logistics chains. Brazil's response to these constraints has been notably measured. Rather than rushing to decommission aging hulls or relying on temporary stopgap solutions, the Brazilian Navy has chosen to manage decline deliberately. The continued service of the Niteroi-class ensures that fleet numbers remain sufficient to sustain presence and training, even as newer platforms are prepared for entry into service. This approach avoids sudden capability gaps that could weaken maritime awareness or reduce operational tempo. The strategic logic behind retaining the Niterói-class is closely tied to timing. New frigates do not appear overnight, and complex shipbuilding programs require years of coordination between industry, government, and the armed forces. By keeping Niterói-class ships active, Brazil buys time. It preserves institutional knowledge, keeps crews at sea, and ensures that when new vessels arrive, they will be integrated into a navy that has not lost its operational rhythm. This logic becomes clearer when viewed alongside the emergence of the Tamandaré-class. The Tamandaré-class is designed to meet the demands of modern naval warfare with improved sensors, modular combat systems, and a focus on long-term sustainability. Yet even as these new ships are introduced, the transition will not be instantaneous. For a period, old and new will serve side by side, creating a layered fleet where experience and innovation overlap. In this transitional phase, the Niteroi-class plays a crucial bridging role. It absorbs routine tasks, training missions, and lower-intensity deployments, allowing newer frigates to focus on high-end readiness and doctrinal development. This division of labor is not a sign of weakness, but of maturity. It reflects a Navy that understands how to allocate resources intelligently during periods of change. Beyond fleet management, the continued use of the Niterói-class offers insights into Brazil's broader naval strategy. Brazil does not seek to project power through constant confrontation or through participation in distant conflicts. Instead, its maritime posture emphasizes control, presence, and stability within its strategic environment. The South Atlantic, Brazil's exclusive economic zone, and key sea lines of communication form the core of this outlook. In such a framework, ships that can reliably patrol, cooperate, and represent the state retain strategic value even when they are no longer cutting edge. The Niteroi-class also reflects Brazil's preference for continuity. Rather than allowing political cycles or budget fluctuations to dictate abrupt changes, the Brazilian Navy has pursued a steady course. Programs are phased, responsibilities are transferred gradually, and institutional memory is preserved. This approach reduces risk and reinforces credibility, both domestically and internationally. Looking toward the early 1930s, the future of the Niteroi-class is becoming clearer. These ships will not remain indefinitely. As Tamandaré-class frigates reach full operational capacity, older hulls will progressively withdraw from frontline service. Some may transition to training roles, while others will be decommissioned after decades of contribution. Their departure is unlikely to be dramatic, and that in itself is telling. A smooth exit is the mark of a Navy that has planned carefully. When the final Niterói-class frigate leaves active service, it will do so having supported Brazilian maritime security for more than half a century. Few platforms can claim such longevity with relevance intact. Their legacy will not be defined by their final configuration or by comparisons with newer ships, but by the role they played in sustaining Brazil's naval presence through changing strategic eras. In this sense, the Niteroi-class is more than an aging fleet. It is a case study in how a rising regional power manages transition without sacrificing stability. While attention naturally shifts toward new hulls and future capabilities, the continued service of these frigates reminds observers that naval strength is not built solely on technology. It is built on continuity, discipline, and the ability to adapt without losing direction. For Brazilian audiences, this story resonates deeply. It reflects a national approach that values gradual progress, institutional resilience, and strategic patience. The Niteroi-class may no longer represent the future of the Brazilian Navy, but it still shapes the present. And in doing so, it quietly prepares the ground for what comes next.